Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. Jessica had a way of making me feel like I was never enough. It wasn't obvious, not at first. It wasn't screaming fights or slam doors. It was a slow, steady erosion of my confidence. Little comments, dismissive glances, the kind of cruelty that doesn't leave bruises but lingers under the skin like sickness. I used to think it was just her personality, that sarcasm was her way of being playful. But over the years, the jokes stopped feeling like jokes. Ryan, do you really need to wear that shirt? You look like a gym rat trying to be a businessman. I looked down on my button-down, wondering what was wrong with it. What's wrong with it? She'd sigh, already pulling something else from the closet. You just don't think about these things, do you? At first, I changed my shirt without argument. I wanted to make her happy. That was my job as a husband, right? But the little changes turned into bigger ones. My wardrobe, my hair, the way I spoke in public. She refined me. She'd say, I just want you to fit in. She'd insist at her company parties, where I was always the plus one, the afterthought standing next to her while she dazzled the room. Her friends were just like her, polished, ambitious, ruthless in their own ways. They didn't say much to me beyond the polite nods of acknowledgement before turning back to whatever conversation Jessica was leading. One night, after an event, I asked, do your friends even like me? Jessica laughed, tossing her heels onto the floor. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? I hesitated. I don't know. They never really talked to me. She smirked, brushing her hair out. Ryan, you own a gym. What are you expecting? An in-depth discussion about corporate acquisitions. I didn't respond. What was the point? That was always how it was. My career, my achievements, they were small compared to hers. She reminded me of it in subtle ways. If I landed a new client, she'd congratulate me with a half-hearted "that's great, babe," before moving on to something more important. If she closed a big deal, she'd expect a full-blown celebration. But the worst moments happened in public, when there was an audience. The moment I truly saw her for who she was happened at a family barbecue. Her parents were hosting an annual summer event that brought together cousins, siblings, old family friends. I was in charge of the grill, something I was actually good at. I'd always loved cooking out, but tonight, everything I did was wrong. Ryan, those burgers are burning, Jessica said loudly from across the patio. I flipped one over. They're fine. She rolled her eyes. You always say that. Then we end up with hockey pucks. A few people chuckled. I felt my jaw tighten. If you don't trust me to cook, you're welcome to do it yourself. She laughed, shaking her head. Touchy much. I'm just trying to help you not embarrass yourself. More chuckles. My ears burned. I kept my eyes on the grill, feeling the weight of the stares, the quiet judgment. Her younger brother, Evan, smirked. Hey, at least he's trying. Cooking's not really his thing, though, right, Jess? Jessica grinned. Oh, trust me, I know. Remember when he tried making dinner for our anniversary? He set off the smoke alarm. I clenched the spatula tighter. That had been years ago, back when I tried to surprise her with a home-cooked meal. It hadn't gone perfectly, but she'd smiled and kissed me, saying it was the thought that counted. Apparently, it had become one of her jokes. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, guess I should have just ordered takeout. Jessica patted my shoulder like I was some incompetent child. See? He knows. That was when I saw it. The way her parents looked at her. Her mother's slight frown. Her father shifting uncomfortably. It was a flash, a moment, but I caught it. Even they saw it. I wasn't the one embarrassing myself. She was. And suddenly, I wondered how long they had known. The realization settled in my chest like a stone. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how a wife was supposed to treat her husband. I had spent so long convincing myself that I just needed to be better, work harder, try more. But no matter what I did, Jessica would always look at me like I wasn't enough. Because in her eyes, I never would be. That night, after the guests had left and Jessica was upstairs scrolling through her phone, I sat in the darkened living room, staring at the blank TV screen. I thought about the way she spoke to me, the way she dismissed my achievements, the way she enjoyed making me feel small. I had ignored it for too long, and for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. Jessica had always loved being the center of attention. It wasn't enough for her to succeed. She needed people to see her success, to acknowledge it, to praise her for it. That was why she surrounded herself with the kind of people who fed into her image. People who admired her sharpness, her confidence, her ability to dominate a conversation. And when I was around, I was just another accessory. That became painfully clear one night when we were out with friends at a high-end lounge downtown. Jessica had invited me, but not because she wanted me there, more because it would have looked bad if she didn't bring her husband along. We sat in a private booth with 6 of her closest friends, executives, consultants, professionals who spent half the evening talking about how busy they were, how in demand their expertise had become. Jessica fit right in, swapping stories about her latest business trip, the doctor she had met, the life-changing deals she was negotiating. I sat quietly, sipping my whiskey, waiting for an opening to contribute. Then, mid-conversation, one of her friends, a smug financial planner named Daniel, turned to me. "So, Ryan, how's business going at the gym?" I appreciated the question. It was a rare moment when someone actually seemed interested in my work. "It's going great," I said. "We just brought in a new strength training program, and I've been working with some professional athletes." Jessica laughed. Loud enough to cut me off completely. "Oh my God," she said, shaking her head. "Ryan, come on. Professional athletes." I blinked. "Yeah, why?" She smirked, swirling her wine. "Babe, don't act like you're training Olympians. You help guys bulk up so they can look good in the mirror." The table chuckled. I felt my stomach tighten, but I forced a smile. "Actually, I've been working with a few serious competitors." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Ryan, you own a gym. Let's not pretend you're coaching for the NFL." The laughter around the table grew louder. I clenched my jaw, feeling my hands tighten into fists under the table. This wasn't new. Jessica had always downplayed my work. But something about the way she did it this time, in front of all these people like I was a joke, it ignited something inside me. I set my glass down carefully. "Jessica." She glanced at me, still amused. "What?" I leaned in slightly. "You know what's funny? I don't think I've ever once mocked your job in front of people. Not even when you spent 3 months chasing a promotion that never happened. Or when you raved about your genius marketing campaign, only for your company to scrap it." The table went silent. Jessica's smile froze. "I wasn't done. I don't make fun of you because I respect what you do. I respect how hard you work. But you seem to enjoy making me look small." I took a sip of my drink, then met her eyes. "Why is that?" Jessica's lips parted slightly, as if she was about to say something, but no words came out. The silence stretched. One of her friends awkwardly cleared their throat. Someone else took a sip of their drink. For the first time ever, Jessica looked uncomfortable. She let out a tight laugh. "Oh, come on, Ryan. It was a joke." I tilted my head. "Yeah? Then why aren't you laughing now?" She glared at me, her jaw tight. "Can we not do this here?" I shrugged. "You started here." More silence. Jessica's friends suddenly looked very interested in their drinks. No one wanted to take sides. Finally, Jessica exhaled sharply, forcing a smile. "Well, anyway, let's change the subject. Daniel, tell me about that new position you were considering." Just like that, the conversation moved on. But Jessica didn't look at me for the rest of the night. I knew what that meant. For years, she had controlled the narrative. She was the confident, successful wife with a nice husband who supported her. But tonight I had shattered that, and she hated me for it. When we got home, she barely made it through the door before she spun around, eyes blazing. What the hell was that? I tossed my keys onto the counter, shrugging. What was what? She stormed closer. "You humiliated me in front of my friends." I let out a short laugh. "Oh, that's rich. You humiliate me all the time, Jessica." She scoffed. "Are you seriously that sensitive?" I was joking. "No," I said firmly. "You weren't. You never are. Every time we're around other people, you go out of your way to put me down. You mock my job, my choices, my existence like I'm some kind of embarrassment to you." Jessica crossed her arms. "Don't be dramatic." I stepped forward, lower my voice. "Here's the thing, Jessica. I'm done letting you treat me like I'm beneath you." Her eyes narrowed. "And what's that supposed to mean?" I held her gaze, my voice calm. "It means that from now on, if you come for me, I'm coming right back. Every time." She stared at me, searching my face for something. Weakness, hesitation, fear. But I had none left. Finally, she exhaled sharply, rolling her eyes. Fine. Whatever. Then she walked upstairs, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a long time, feeling the quiet settle around me. She thought this was over. She thought I backed down like I always had. She had no idea. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Jessica and I barely spoke for the next few days. She was still fuming from the way I called her out in front of her friends, and I didn't care enough to smooth things over. I had spent too many years apologizing just to keep the peace, letting her walk all over me while I convinced myself that was what a good husband did. But something had shifted. I wasn't playing that role anymore. She knew it too. I could see it in the way she acted around me. Tense, guarded, like she was waiting for me to drop another bomb. But I wasn't interested in petty fights. I was interested in something else entirely. Because for the first time, I started wondering if Jessica's behavior wasn't just about ego or control. If maybe, just maybe, there was another reason she had spent the past few years making me feel like I was nothing. And then, one evening, I found the proof. It was an accident. She had left for dinner with a coworker, someone from her company she insisted was just a friend, and I was home alone. I wasn't snooping, wasn't digging. I was just cleaning up. Jessica had left her closet a mess, as usual, half-packed from her last business trip, so I started tidying up. That's when I found a small, velvet box tucked in the back of the drawer beneath some folded shirts. My first thought? Maybe she had bought me a gift. A rare gesture, but possible. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside was an expensive watch, sleek, stylish, definitely not my taste. A small, folded note sat beneath it. My hands trembled as I opened it. For every second we steal. Can't wait to see you again. No name, no signature. But it didn't matter. I felt my heartbeat in my ears, my breathing slow and deliberate. My mind raced through every possibility, every explanation, but there was only one that made sense. Jessica was cheating. I sat down on the edge of the bed, gripping the note in my hands. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was calm, too calm. It was a strange, detached kind of clarity, like my brain was methodically sorting through the information before letting me feel anything. The watch, the message, the secrecy. Jessica had been sleeping with someone else. And suddenly, everything clicked. The way she treated me, the way she dismissed me. She needed me to be small, needed to convince herself I was beneath her so she wouldn't feel guilty about betraying me. That was why every little thing I did was wrong in her eyes. If I was a joke, a failure, an embarrassment, then she could justify everything. I closed the box carefully and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Because I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Jessica thought she had power over me. She thought she was in control. But she had no idea what was coming. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. I was going to play this smart. I was going to win. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Jessica, listening to her breathe, my mind spinning with possibilities. I had spent years feeling powerless in this marriage, but now I had the upper hand. She thought she was untouchable, thought she had me wrapped around her finger. But she had made a mistake, one I was about to turn into her biggest regret. The old me would have confronted her immediately, demanded answers, begged for honesty. But I wasn't that man anymore. Jessica had spent too much time treating me like I was beneath her, making me feel like I was the problem, when all along, she was the one betraying me. Now it was my turn to flip the script. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. Jessica stirred next to me, stretching with a satisfied sigh. "Morning," she mumbled. I forced a smile. "Morning." She didn't notice anything different. She had no idea that I knew. And that was exactly what I wanted. That morning, while she was in the shower, I slipped into her closet and grabbed the watch box again. I swapped the expensive watch with an old, busted one from my gym locker, one I hadn't worn in years. It was scratched, the band was worn, the glass cracked. Then I placed it back in the exact same spot. When she finally went to retrieve it, she would be expecting luxury. Instead, she'd find something worthless. Step 1 done. Step 2 was more precise. I needed proof. The note and the watch were enough for me, but they wouldn't be enough in court. And I wasn't about to leave this marriage with anything less than everything. That afternoon, While Jessica was at work, I installed a GPS tracker on her car. Nothing flashy, just a simple, discreet device that would log her location in real time. I synced it to my phone and watched as the blinking stayed put in her office parking lot. That night at dinner, I acted completely normal. Jessica barely looked up from her phone as she poked at her salad. So, I might have to take another trip soon. Miami again. I took a slow sip of my drink. Work? She nodded. A medical seminar. I forced myself to look uninterested. Didn't you just go to one? She shrugged. It's an industry thing. Besides, it's Miami. Could be fun. I watched her carefully, noting the way she avoided my eyes, the way she reached for her wine a little too quickly. She wasn't just lying. She enjoyed lying. I smiled. You should go. She finally glanced at me, searching for something, anger, suspicion, resistance. When she found nothing, she smirked. I knew you'd understand. Oh, I understood perfectly. That night, when she finally fell asleep, I checked the GPS tracker. At exactly 9:42 p.m., Jessica had left work. But she hadn't come home. She had driven across town to a high-end hotel and parked in the valet section. She stayed there for 3 hours. Then at 12:51 a.m., she finally came home, slipping into bed next to me like nothing had happened. I lay there, my heart steady, my mind already racing ahead. She had just handed me exactly what I needed. The next day, I took it further. I needed to see it with my own eyes. When Jessica told me she had a late meeting, I simply nodded, kissed her cheek, and told her to have a good night. Then I waited exactly 15 minutes before checking the GPS tracker again. Sure enough, she was heading back to the same hotel. I grabbed my keys and followed. By the time I arrived, she had already checked in. I parked a few spots away, keeping my distance, watching as she walked through the glass doors in a fitted black dress, her hair styled like she had spent extra time making herself look perfect. Not for me. For him. I didn't move. I didn't storm inside, didn't confront her. That wasn't the plan. I simply pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos. Jessica walking inside. Jessica checking her reflection in the lobby mirror. Jessica stepping into the elevator. Then I waited. 3 hours later, she walked back out, looking relaxed, her hair slightly out of place. I took more photos. She had no idea I was there. She had no idea that, piece by piece, I was building a case against her. She had no idea that when this was over, she wouldn't just lose me. She would lose everything. The night I followed Jessica to the hotel, I didn't feel anger. Not in the way most men might. There was no blind rage, no overwhelming urge to burst through the doors and drag her out by the wrist. No dramatic confrontation in the lobby, no shouting match in the middle of a crowd. What I felt was something sharper, colder, control. I wasn't going to lose it. Not now. Not when I had the upper hand. Jessica walked out of the hotel, her heels clicking against the pavement as she checked her phone, probably texting him, telling him how amazing their night had been, making plans for the next one. I watched her from the driver's seat of my truck, my fingers drumming lightly against the steering wheel. I had enough proof to ruin her. But I wasn't done yet, because just exposing her wasn't enough. She had to feel it, the way I had felt it all these years. So I let her think she was winning. The next morning, Jessica was in an unusually good mood. She hummed to herself as she made coffee, scrolling through her phone with a small smirk on her lips. "You're up early," I said casually, pouring myself a cup. She barely glanced at me. "Big day at work." I nodded. "Yeah? What's on the agenda?" She shrugged. "Meetings. Reports. The usual." She lied so easily. It almost impressed me. I kissed her on the cheek before I left for work, watching her reaction. She barely noticed, too distracted by whatever was on her phone. By the time she left for her job, I was already back on my laptop, going through the photos I had taken. Her walking into the hotel. Her leaving hours later. Her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her hair, making sure she looked perfect before meeting him. But I needed one last piece. Jessica's company was strict when it came to employee conduct. Affairs weren't illegal, but fraud? That was another story. And lucky for me, Jessica had made one critical mistake. She had been using her corporate card. I logged into our shared financial statements and scrolled through her recent transactions. There was room service from the hotel, charged to her work expense account. A five-star restaurant bill listed as a client dinner, when I knew for a fact there was only one client she was entertaining. I smiled to myself. Jessica thought she was careful. She thought she was invincible. But now, she had left a trail even she couldn't cover up. That evening, I played my part perfectly. She came home late, claiming she had stayed late at the office. I asked about her day, acted like a loving, oblivious husband. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she was so tired. I told her to get some rest. And then, while she slept soundly next to me, I forwarded every bit of proof I had to her company's HR department. Subject: urgent concern regarding employee misconduct. I didn't write much. Just attached the receipts, the expense statements, and the photos. I let the evidence speak for itself. Then, I sent the final message. To him. Hello. It wasn't hard to track him down. Jessica wasn't exactly discreet. A little digging through her social media, some cross-referencing with her work contacts, and I had his name. And even better, I had his wife's name too. I kept it short. Thought you should know. Your husband and my wife have been spending a lot of time together. I attached the photos. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. Jessica had spent years making me feel like I was the weak one, like I was some clueless idiot who should be grateful to have her. By the time she woke up, her entire world would already be crashing down around her. Jessica woke up completely unaware that her world had already begun to collapse. She stretched, let out a soft sigh, and rolled over, resting a hand on my chest like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't a liar. Like she wasn't a cheater. I let her touch linger for a second before sitting up and swinging my legs over the bed. Early start today, I muttered, standing up. She yawned. You okay? I nodded, rubbing the back of my neck. Just a lot on my mind. She didn't press, didn't notice the slight smirk I was hiding as I walked to the bathroom. She had no idea that, as she lay there, relaxed and content, her phone was likely already buzzing with the first ripple effects of what I'd set in motion. Downstairs, I pour myself a coffee and check my email. Inbox, 3 new messages. The first was from Jessica's company. Subject: HR follow-up. Urgent review required. I opened it and skimmed through the formal, carefully worded corporate language. They were conducting a thorough review of the reported misconduct and had temporarily suspended Jessica's expense account pending further investigation. The second email was from an unknown address. Who the hell are you? I chuckled. Looked like her lover had received my message. The third email, though, was the one I had been waiting for. It was from his wife. Thank you. I had a feeling. If you have more proof, I want to see it. I stared at the words for a moment, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. Jessica had no idea how much damage was already spreading through the cracks. And then, right on cue, her phone rang from upstairs. She answered groggily, her voice drifting down the staircase. Hello? A pause. Then, a sharp inhale. What do you mean my expense account is frozen? I sipped my coffee, listening. No, that's insane, she snapped. There has to be a mistake. Another pause. Her voice dropped lower. I don't understand. Why would anyone report? Then silence. I smirked. The moment of realization was hitting her. The dots were connecting. I heard the bed creak as she sat up. Heard her footsteps hurry toward the closet, then the sound of hangers rattling as she threw on clothes. A minute later, she stormed down the stairs, her phone still pressed to her ear. She barely spared me a glance as she grabbed her keys. No, I did not misuse company funds, she snapped. Her eyes flicked to me for just a second, something sharp in her gaze. Suspicion. She knew. She just didn't know she knew. Not yet. I sipped my coffee again. Everything okay? Jessica hesitated for half a second too long. Work emergency. I nodded slowly. That sucks. Hope it's nothing serious. She narrowed her eyes, but I kept my face blank. Then she was gone. I exhaled, my smirk widening as I grabbed my phone and checked the GPS tracker on her car. She wasn't heading to work. She was heading to his house. Good. By the time she got there, his wife would already have the pictures. The messages. The proof. Jessica was walking straight into her own reckoning. I spent the next few hours at the gym, pretending everything was normal, helping clients, running through my usual routine. I wasn't going to sit around, waiting for her to come home and spin some ridiculous lie. I wanted her to sweat, and she did. I checked my phone at lunch, 10 missed calls from her. A handful of texts. Jessica, call me. Now. Jessica, I need to talk to you. Jessica, I swear to God, if you did this. I ignored every single one. She came home that evening looking wrecked. Her hair was a mess, her blouse wrinkled, her eyes red like she had been crying or screaming. I sat on the couch, flipping through a sports channel, barely glancing at her. Hey, she dropped her bag on the floor. We need to talk. I nodded toward the kitchen. There's dinner in the fridge if you're hungry. Ryan. I turned off the TV and stood up slowly. Something wrong? She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You tell me. I tilted my head. You look stressed. Jessica's hands curled into fists. Don't play dumb. You did this. I kept my expression calm. Did what? Her voice rose. You know exactly what I'm talking about. My job is investigating me. His wife knows. How? I shrugged. Maybe because you've been cheating. She sucked in a breath like I had slapped her. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I know everything. Jessica. The hotel. The messages. The watch. Her face went pale. Save it, I interrupted. I don't want to hear whatever lie you were about to tell me. I don't care. She swallowed hard. Ryan, please. I let out a short laugh. Please what? Please forget that you've been sneaking around? Please ignore the fact that you humiliated me for years while running around with someone else? Her breathing was uneven now. I didn't mean for it to happen. I smiled coldly. Yeah? Well, neither did I. She blinked. What? I grabbed my phone and opened my email, scrolling to the forwarded messages from her company. I turned the screen to her, letting her see the HR notice. Her eyes widened. You reported me? She whispered. I shrugged. I just sent them a couple of receipts. The rest was all you. Her chest rose and fell quickly, panic creeping in. Ryan, you don't understand. If they fire me, I nodded. Yeah, that'd be real unfortunate. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. Jessica had spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough. Like I was lucky to have her. Now she was the one left begging. And I was already gone. Jessica didn't sleep that night. I could hear her pacing in the bedroom long after I'd stretched out on the couch. The sound of her footsteps restless, anxious. Every so often, she would stop, probably staring at her phone, willing a message from HR or her lover to come through with some magical solution to the disaster she had created. But there was no way out of this. She had spent years making me feel trapped, stuck in a marriage where I was always the problem, always the one who needed to be better. Now, she was the one scrambling for control, and I wasn't about to throw her a lifeline. The next morning, she was up before me, sitting at the kitchen counter with her laptop open, aggressively typing out emails. She didn't acknowledge me as I poured a cup of coffee, but I could feel her watching me, waiting, testing to see if I would say something first. I didn't. She broke first. I have a meeting with HR today. I took a sip of my coffee. That's so. Her eyes narrowed. They're looking into my expense reports. They said they received an anonymous complaint. I nodded slowly. Weird. Her jaw tightened. Cut the crap, Ryan. You did this. I exhaled through my nose, setting my coffee down. Jessica, all I did was send them some receipts. The rest? That's on you. She pushed away from the counter, standing up sharply. Do you even understand what you've done? I could lose my job, my career, everything. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Kind of like how I lost everything the second you decided I wasn't enough for you. She faltered for just a second before regaining her composure. I was going to fix things, I laughed. Fix things? Jessica, you planned this. You told me to my face you were going to cheat. I leaned in slightly. You wanted me to know. That's the part that gets me. You weren't even sorry. Her lips pressed together. I didn't think it would go this far. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You know, that's the problem with you. You never think about consequences. You always just assume you'll get away with it, that you'll always come out on top. But not this time, Jess. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then exhaled sharply. I smirked. Let me guess. Not the news you were hoping for. She shot me a glare before grabbing her purse. This isn't over. I shrugged. It is for me. She stormed out, and I sat back down, sipping my coffee in peace. I already knew how this was going to play out. Jessica was good at talking her way out of trouble, but this wasn't some minor mistake. The receipts, the proof of her personal expenses, the blatant fraud. It was undeniable. Her company had no choice but to take action. Sure enough, a few hours later, I got a text from her. Jessica, they put me on unpaid leave while they investigate. This is your fault. I smirked. No, this is yours. I didn't respond. That evening, she came home looking drained, her confidence chipped away even further. She slammed her purse down, rubbing her temples. I hope you're happy. I didn't bother looking up from my laptop. I am actually. Her head snapped toward me. You ruined my life. I closed my laptop and leaned back. No, you did. She let out a sharp breath. We can fix this. If you just, I held up a hand. Jess, stop. I don't want to fix anything. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she looked genuinely lost. I pushed my laptop aside and stood up. I already talked to a lawyer. Jessica stiffened. You what? I filed for divorce this morning, I said simply. Her face drained of color. No, we can talk about this. We can, I shook my head. There's nothing left to talk about. She blinked rapidly, her breathing uneven. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I laughed coldly. Of course you didn't. Because you never thought I could. You spent years making me feel like I was nothing. Like I needed you to be somebody. I grabbed the folder from the counter and placed it in front of her. But the truth is, I was always better off without you. She stared at the divorce papers like they were some foreign object. Ryan, please. I met her gaze, calm and steady. Sign the papers, Jessica. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the folder. She had spent years tearing me down. Now, she was the one left broken. The day Jessica moved out, I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed, watching as she packed up the last of her things. The house was quiet, eerily so. No passive-aggressive comments about how I should be helping her. No sighs of exasperation when I did something the wrong way. Just silence. I could see it in her face. How much she wanted to say something, to argue, to fight, to claw back any shred of control she had left. But she knew there was nothing left to save. She zipped up her suitcase and finally turned to me, her eyes searching mine. You really don't care, do you? I tilted my head. Did you care when you packed for Vegas? Her lips parted slightly, but I could see the flash of guilt before she masked it. That's not the same. I smirked. You're right. This is worse. Because now you have to live with the consequences. She swallowed hard, shifting her grip on her suitcase. I never wanted this. I let out a short laugh. You planned this, Jessica. You didn't just cheat. You told me to my face you were going to. And now you're acting like this wasn't what you wanted? She looked away, her fingers tightening around the handle of her bag. I thought you'd fight for me. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. That's the difference between us. I did fight. For years. I fought for this marriage. I fought for you. But you destroyed it. Jessica's throat bobbed, her eyes glassy, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. She walked past me, dragging her suitcase behind her. I didn't move. Didn't reach for her. Didn't say goodbye. The door closed behind her, and with it, the weight of years of manipulation, gaslighting, and cruelty disappeared. I was finally free. The first few weeks alone felt surreal. There was no one nitpicking my every move, no more second-guessing whether my clothes, my words, my very existence was enough. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I could actually breathe. I took back my life piece by piece. I changed the locks, repainted the house, replaced the furniture Jessica had chosen with things that actually felt like mine. The sleek, cold aesthetic she had insisted on was gone. In its place was warmth, comfort, something that actually felt like home. Work thrived too. Without Jessica constantly belittling what I did, I threw myself into expanding my business. I signed new clients, grew my gym's reach, and finally started the personal training program I had been putting off for years because she always made it seem stupid. And then, one day, I got a text from an unknown number. Jessica, I made a mistake. I stared at the message for a long time, then simply locked my phone and went back to my life. Because Jessica was a mistake, and I wasn't looking back. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.